Hello, my name is Thomas Bespedal, and I'm the resident writing consultant here at the Copenhagen Business School Library. And this is a sort of a supplementary video for a lecture that I'm preparing to hold in a few hours. I thought it would be helpful to make this as a standalone video because that way the screen capture will work better than it will in the lecture that I'm doing. So here we go. What I'm basically just going to show you is just a quick little trick. It's not any sort of official search strategy, but it has to do with how to position a research interest, a curiosity, and how to begin to resolve some of those issues using our library's databases. And in this case, the one that I will be using mainly is called the Web of Science. And so I'll just show you very quickly what I mean. It's just there's an interesting find here. I think the lesson will be obvious. I will work reasonably quickly. I don't think this will take more than a few minutes, and see if you find it useful. Let's have a look. So I'm going to show you what I have on my screen really quickly, and then I'll come back in a second. What I have on the screen here is this is not in the Web of Science. This is in Business Source Ultimate, one of the EBSCO databases. And there may be many reasons that you would arrive at exactly this particular entry. You may have done some kind of search, and you've decided this is a paper that you'd be interested in, or you might have been directed to this particular paper by a teacher or by your course readings or something like that. It's a very, very famous paper, as we will be able to verify in a few minutes. And it's called The Collapse of Sense-Making in Organizations, the Mann-Gulch Disaster. The great thing about an entry like this is it gives you other things that you can look for, these subject terms that you can look for if you want to find similar work. And of course, the way it's described in the abstract also helps you to search for things like resilience or sense-making that will find you similar papers. So that's just a quick thing to point out. That's not really what I wanted to show you here. So if we click on the full text button, which is available for many of the articles. In some other articles, you have to go a slightly different route to get the full text, but in this case, it was easy. You will see that it's a standard journal article in a very recognized journal, the Administrative Science Quarterly. This journal is is a very prestigious journal. And this paper, like I say, is a very famous one. What I wanted to point out is right at the beginning of the article, right in the introduction, we are told that the purpose of this article is to reanalyze the Mann-Gulch fire disaster in Montana, described in Norman Maclean's 1992 award-winning book, Young Men and Fire. Right, so we are, of course, a library, and I went down into the library. I'm not going to show you how to do that here, but I went down into the library and I found the book, Young Men and Fire, which is, I found the book, Young Men and Fire, right, down in the library. And something occurred to me that we have here a paper that is based on a book. So it's a whole paper published in a major journal that is based on Carl Weick's reading of this book. And then I thought, well, you know, there are other books, and that's an interesting kind of research project. Can we do a research project based on the reading of books that have already been published? And I thought, let's try to do something similar with this book, which looks not very impressive, but is very well read. It's called The Big Short by Michael Lewis. And of course, you may recognize the title, The Big Short, from the famous movie that came out a few years ago about the financial crisis. This book is the basis of that movie. So what I thought would be interesting to do would be to go into our databases and see if we can find other papers that have been written about books like this. And so here's the way I'm going to suggest we do it. And you'll hopefully learn a few tricks here as we go, just kind of by immersing ourselves in it. What I'm going to do is go over to the alphabetical list of databases, which is just on our database page right here. We're going to go into the alphabetical list. We are going to go under W, and then we will go to Web of Science. And here we are in the Web of Science database. And I'm going to do a couple of different things. The first thing I'm actually going to try to do here is just to find our paper, Vike, and then I'm going to add a row. I'm going to select another field here. We'll go with the title, and we will say Man Gulch, and hopefully the search will give us, it actually does, and here we are. We have collapse of sense-making organizations. I just want to very quickly show you what happens when we now click on the title. We find this. Notice we get a lot of the same information that we got in the other database, but we get the title, of course, the publication that it's published in, the abstract. We do get some keywords, although that's not quite as detailed. If you scroll down, you will find the reference list, the literature list for the article in a particular form, but you can actually get that as a search result as well, so that so you just get all the titles there as a search result, which can be useful to you. Up here in the right-hand corner, you will see that it has 2,090 citations, which is quite a few. That's a good indicator that this is a very influential paper. And down here, you will find no, it's up here again. It's already up here. And up here in the corner here, you will find something called related records. If you click on related records, you have to remember that this article cites 67 papers of its own. The related records are going to be all the papers that share at least one reference with it. So that's usually going to be quite a long list. We will go here and have a look. I've noticed that there's 30,000 articles that share a reference. And at this point, we could do something like this. We don't have to do this, but we can, in order to narrow this search result, we can say, well, which papers cite an article, share a reference with Carl Weick's famous paper about the Mangosh disaster, and happen to be about the financial crisis, right? So we could write that there. We see there's only 72 of those 32 or those 30,000 papers that use some sort of Weick relevant literature that Weick also found relevant, and also talk about the financial crisis. So this list of papers might be interesting to look at, right? I'm going very quickly through this, but I think you see what I'm getting at here, that just a few extra search terms here limits our result from 30,000 to 72. And as soon as you get under 100 hits, you can just search through them quite easily. Now, this is where it's going to get interesting. We're going to go back to the search. We're going to go to, instead of doing a document search like we did before, we're going to do what's called a cited references search. And we are going to find Weick's article by a slightly different route. We are still going to go like this. We are now going to say cited title. I'm not going to explain everything I do. Feel free to contact me or another librarian for tips. But I am going to put from the title of the article a truncated word, collapse, from the title. And the reason for this will become apparent in a moment. Well, would become apparent if we search through it. What it really does is just gives us a much more surveyable search result. Otherwise, we would have quite a few to sort through here to see if it's the right one. These are all correct. Notice that this one is not one that we want. And there's 28 citing articles. It's not the right one, but for some reason it brings it in, even though it knows full well that cola is not in the title. And there's a little bit of, I think, artificial intelligence going on here. What we're going to do is we're going to select them all. We will then deselect the one that we don't want. Notice if I had pressed collapse, we would have missed this one. That's why I used just that truncated form. We're going to see the results, and now we have a search list of all the articles that cite, which is to say refer to the Carl Weick article. We can go back and do this again with the book, right? With this book here, so we can say, well, who cites this book, right? Obviously, Carl Weick does, but who else does? And so we're going to go in here. We're going to say MacLean, Norman. We are going to say Young here, but in this case now, because it's a book and not an article, we're going to say cited work. This goes for either if it's a book title or if it is a journal article title. It's just going to be counted as cited work. And then we are, for reasons that I will show you in a second, we are not going to put a year there. We're going to assume that Norman MacLean and this word from the title will be sufficient to limit the results to more or less the books that we want. And I will show you. Notice what would have happened if we had limited ourselves to the date of publication, the 1992 that Weick uses. We would have missed 56 citing articles because of the second edition of the book, which was published in 2017. We would also have missed the ones that simply get the date wrong, like 1990, 1982, that is probably just a typo. 1972, also probably just a typo, because the book was not published in 1972. It was published in 1992. So that's, and there's of course some that don't have dates at all. So we are going to select all of these. We're going to see the results. And we now have 97 citing articles that all cite Norman MacLean's book directly. We're going to do this one more time because there is an interesting learning point for this. We're going to do Lewis's book, and we will use the same methodology roughly. We are going to take one word from the title, the big short. We're going to truncate it because it does need to know that it wants big and then anything that follows, not just big short, and not just big. And then we're going to leave the date open again. Notice again, there's a range of dates that this is published under, and this is actually, I am, of course, made a mistake because I didn't type Lewis M, so we didn't get Michael Lewis's Big Short. There we go. Now it's a little bit better. All of these are ones that we are interested in, just more or less. Sometimes we just say, well, we'll take even the mistakes. Notice that the dates vary. And so using the date as a limiter there would not have been particularly good. We are going to select all of these and see the results. I say sometimes if we get a little bit extra, then that's fine, but we just want to make sure that we've got a nice search result to work with. Then I'm going to go back to the search function. Now we've made these searches. I'm going to go into Documents, and I'm then going to select the Advanced Search option. And you'll now notice that we have a history of searches here. Now, it has remembered the things I did preparing for this, but I will just show you what we're going to do here. We're going to go with this one, which was all of the ones that are Weick, and then we are going to go with the ones that cite MacLean. And then what we're going to do is find all of the articles. We're going to combine those two sets. We're going to find all the articles that cite both Vike and McLean. Now, there's a reason for that. There's 39 there. Notice that that's far fewer than the ones that cite Vike, because we wanted to know which papers out there actually go back to the source, which papers out there actually go back and read the McLean book, or at least talk directly about it, just like Vike did, and look at that data. The other thing we then wanted to know is which ones are going to cite Vike's reading of a book and also Lewis's book. Notice there's 319 to choose from. We might think that because there's so many that there's going to be a greater overlap here, but of course, thematically, it's not as great. We're going to combine these two sets and we get a single paper that has noticed this possibility that we started with as a curiosity. Is there a way of reading Michael Lewis's book about the financial crisis in the same way that Vike read the collapse of, that Vike read Young Men in Fire? And then we can look at this and we can see that, of course, this one has a whole bunch of information as well. All the same stuff, good place to start. I haven't looked more closely at the paper, so I don't have anything interesting to say about whether or not this would be a good research project. But notice what we did there. We just took this idea of reading a book and then doing a sense-making analysis of the content of that book, and then saying, could we do a collapse of sense-making during the financial crisis project that looks a little bit like the collapse of sense-making in a firefighting situation in Vike's paper. So that's it. I hope that's helpful, and I hope that the format worked out in such a way that you could follow along nicely. I will make sure this is available online along with the lecture where this will be a little part of it. Have a great day and enjoy your research.